School. Hello, welcome to Future Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Oxford University. It's a very small place in the UK. It's also very old. There's not that many people going there, and it's a horrible city. I mean, it's full of trees and old buildings and almost no pollution. Well, there is some. And now, Oxford, as I think we all know, is one of the top universities in the world. It was ranked first in the world, actually, in the Times Higher Education for 2018, 17, 19, 22, and 2021. Already, it's a university that looks into the future as well. There's almost 25,000 students in Oxford, in case you didn't know, and about 50% of them are international students, like Maria, for example, that come from about 160 countries and territories. Now, a bit about Saïd Business School. For those of you that don't know, it's a really good school, by the way. It was founded in 1996 thanks to a generous donation from philanthropist Saïd, of course, Wafiq Saïd, and it's one of the top business schools in the world. Now, I think this conversation last year would have been interesting, but this year is a special year. Why is it a special year? I think we all know that, unfortunately. So I would like to take actually three perspectives from you. A perspective of a staff, of an enabler, a perspective of a professor, a teacher, and the perspective of a beneficiary of a student. So how was 2020 for you in terms of learning and creating learning experiences for others? Pegram, how was it for you to live in these times in Oxford, or maybe outside of Oxford?
Well, Ciprian, there's so much to say. It was so different. And one of the hardest things to get used to was not being able to do what I'm used to. But to then still project to the students confidence and enthusiasm and create a proper learning environment for them. But I decided not to fake it. I decided to embrace the unusualness of it and to invite the students to help me, and they seized that opportunity. I was really lucky to not be teaching right when it all started. So I had the opportunity to observe what some of my colleagues were doing and to talk to students that I already knew about what was working for them and what wasn't working for them. And if I had not had that student and colleague input, I'm sure I would have dropped many more balls. But then when I did start teaching, about maybe a month after things got strange, I continued to just constantly ask the students what they felt would work or what was or wasn't working, and also to confer with my colleagues. So in general, just embracing the weirdness helped all of us feel better about it. Now, whether it helped us do better about it, I don't know. Time will tell. I think some things worked very well, some things really didn't. And some of the things that we did new, I'd like to keep doing. And I'm sure we can talk about each of those things in more detail in a minute, but maybe we should hear from some of the other perspectives next as
Maria,
well.
how was this 2020, amazing 2020 for you at SBS and in Oxford?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. At the time I had applied for the MBA, this was definitely not what I was expecting. So this was sometime last year in September when the world was still, how we knew it. But since joining, and I think it's been about 2-3 months now, I'd say it's been an interesting experience. It's been different from what I expected with the traditional MBA, but there have been pockets of pleasant surprises. So one thing that is clear is that the school really thought about this, and they put the students at the heart of it, just pretty much trying to simulate an equivalent experience in a COVID world. So for example, there are still in-person interactions, but they're socially distanced. You have to use masks. It's very different. But one thing I found particularly interesting was the fact that the class, is in smaller groups, which for an MBA facilitates for more in-depth discussion. So imagine previously you had a class of say maybe 80, and it was a 1 hour or 2 hour class, and not every 80 people are going to get to speak. But now in the post-COVID world, we're forced into smaller classes, much larger space between people. But then you have the effect of people being more present in class. You have smaller groups, you have richer, deeper conversations. So I think that definitely would be one pro in this conversation, and it's very tied into the building back better theme. I'm a radical optimist and also a realist as well, as you can kind of tell. But I do think that post-COVID has presented an opportunity for us to rethink how we deliver education. I'm just gonna pause there and let my colleagues chime in as well.
Cool. Smaller classes means or might mean better experiences, but that might also mean more pressure on the staff in particular to support this inflation of needs. Now, Sorina, from the other side, from the ones making the magic happen, how was 2020 for you? And what did you? How did you went from we have a problem to this is one or these are some solutions? What's the process within the staff of the SBS and Oxford to reach something that fits more people?
So I think for us, the most challenging thing was the suddenness of everything. So we literally went from hosting a 500 attendee event on the Saturday to a full lockdown on Monday. And so I think we faced several difficulties. One was the external one towards our students, and I'm referring this to the class, to the cohort before Maria's cohort. They were, midway through their program. They had signed up for an in-person MBA, and within, just a few weeks, we had to transition to a full online program. So managing those expectations and managing the grief and at some point the anger of having to go through this was a challenge. And then also as a team internally being separated, having to switch the delivery of co-curricular programming, which is what we do at the Entrepreneurship Center, to full online, having to support members of faculty, again, doing everything virtually. That put a lot of pressure on the team. But luckily, we were a very strong team, and I think just being resilient and moving really quickly to adapt, while also keeping this connection, like Pegram was saying, with the students, and asking them what are the expectations, how things have changed, what can we do to support them better. I think that communication was key to us managing to adapt and deliver at high standards.
Yeah. Speaking of standards and or high standards, value, different type of value is what we give to our students. I mean, I teach at the Entrepreneurship Academy, which is a business school, an entrepreneurial school in Bucharest. We're also in Entrepreneurship Academy as we speak, that we're hosted here. How do you offer the same value to students when your value model was based on physical interaction in the end? Pegram, how do you do that as a facilitator of conversations and learning?
Well, I can tell you what we did and some of the challenges that we faced, and with the caveat that I'm sure not all of it succeeded, but you're right that value, focusing on giving the students and other stakeholders value for money or valuable experience, had to be the first criterion. So rather than thinking about convenience or efficiency, we did try right from the start to focus on making sure the students were getting, something they deserved. And there were so many really interesting obstacles, like the fact that our students have a very international profile, and when many of them left campus, they spread around the world, and they were apart by 18 time zones. So scheduling a class where people were, some of them going to bed and others waking up at 3 a.m. and still others, dealing with very young children during class, or others still having to wear masks on camera. Those were things we didn't foresee at all. And of course, they undermined a sense of camaraderie. And the ways we tried to compensate for it were, as Maria's indicated, breaking down the big groups into small groups, and doing a lot more active learning. So lots of exercises, lots of little tasks, quizzes, and group work, where a group of 4 or 5 students, maybe all in the same time zone, would be sent off into a Zoom breakout room to do something. And then capturing a lot of the conversation with chat functions, or WhatsApp or Telegram, other technologies to complement the video conferencing. And mostly that kept people engaged. It was engagement of a different sort, but it was engagement that emerged as effective. And I think, and Maria would be able to comment on this, I think we're still doing a fair amount of that. Smaller class sizes, much more active learning, lots of parallel conversations with other technology platforms. I don't know, Maria, is that kind of what it feels like for you right now?
I have a short follow-up.
That quite captures it.
So Ciprian wanted to come in there, but I'm glad you've confirmed, Maria, and we'll get back to you in a second.
Just a short follow-up question to Pegram. Smaller classes, which I think it's a brilliant idea, require more time from teachers and professors, right? I mean,
they do, and we're now in a situation, and Maria will definitely be able to talk about this, where we're doing smaller classes, and the professors basically have to do the same thing 8 times in a week, or 8 different professors have to somehow deliver the equivalent material as each other. But before this term, so last term, right in the heat of it, when it all started, a lot of what we did was to hand a lot of the responsibility of the learning over to student groups, because we didn't have a system where professors managed it. Basically, I'd have a class of 90 people on Zoom, and my TA and I would break them into small groups, 10 small groups, more maybe, and they would have to go off on their own and perform tasks. And so the trick was, in advance, setting up tasks that would be motivating, pedagogically useful, and completely feasible for independent study. And then this is the importance of capturing all that off-stage discussion through something like WhatsApp or Telegram, then having that material for the students to look back on later and reflect in their assessment or following week. Smaller groups without a huge administrative burden are possible, but it does take a lot of advance work and a lot of faith in the autonomy and motivation of the students.
Mm.
Yeah, Maria, please. Motivation of the students,
No. Yeah, if I could just chime in, I think that's absolutely right. I think the model has pretty much shifted from a, I don't know, maybe 1-2 channel type education delivery to multi-pronged. So just like Pegram mentioned, you have like technology, there's pre-recorded material to which you can kind of pace yourself. You can decide when you want to complete that. But then there's in class, which is more live, which is more, refining the concepts that you've learned and really solidifying them. And there's quizzes that happen either individually or through small groups. So I think the multi-pronged approach has been effective in the sense that it does keep the attention span. It does, feel like learning. You do look back and say, okay, these are concepts that, have been solidified through multiple, channels of education. And I think one thing just to spotlight is just the genuine, would I say, the genuineness of the professors and their this is what they really want to help the students, and you can kind of see it through the interaction. You can see it with the extra time they are willing to give, even though you know that this is probably not easy. But you can see that they are very willing to help, and this, translates itself in either one-on-one sessions, small group discussions beyond the study group, and support sessions. If you have read the material, and you have interacted in class and the concepts are still not clear, the professors actually, put in time to hold these support sessions. So I think these multi-pronged, approaches have been effective so far. It's not, I don't think it's the same as it was before, but I think the school has done a good job of trying to take the spirit of what, learning was pre-COVID and interpret it in this crazy world that we live in today. So I think that's it. And to be honest, that doesn't happen overnight. I don't think it's perfect yet. I don't think that it doesn't have its challenges. But I think that we live in a world where we've been shown that resilience and, adapting to things is more important than anything else. Yeah. So I think that's the journey we're on right now.
I would add to the previous question to Sorina something about her work as well, because she's not just, she does partnerships and stakeholder engagement, which sounds like a lot, but it's not just students. There's a whole ecosystem around Oxford, foreign speakers, events, etc., etc. How did you offer, again, the same value to all of the stakeholders, not just the students, from your position and with your colleagues at SBS and the larger Oxford staff?
So the work with the Entrepreneurship Center is an experiential learning center focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. So a lot of the engagements that we have are focused mainly on the startup ecosystem. And oddly enough, we've seen an increase in demand from externals wanting to engage with our student body and wanting to be involved in our delivery of co-curricular programming. So the volume of work has increased for me. I was very pleased to see that people want to contribute and want to support. The challenge here comes with the fact that we are no longer able to meet people in person as easily as we used to. And for me, just in terms of deciding on the partners we end up working with, or even the individual stakeholders, for me, that face-to-face interaction and that one-on-one time was very important. So again, everything has moved online. I guess it just requires a little bit more time to be allocated to the screening phase. But I would say that the quality of stakeholders and the potential for partnerships is much better in the current setting.
Yeah. I have a personal question which has nothing to do with hybrid education or technology, but it has to do with feelings. So for the past, I think 3 years, April for me is Oxford. I joined the Ashoka and school events there. I spent time with friends like Sorina and others. There's an atmosphere there. There's an energy in the air. There's people. There's beer. There's late nights of meaningful or non-meaningful conversations. What do you miss the most these days from your Oxford life, not just in the pure teaching or learning, but from the Oxford life So Pegram, what do you miss the most?
Well, I miss those things, and you know, it's not just April. It's not a party 12 months of the year, but there is a deep tradition in Oxford and other ancient universities of conviviality, of, you know, eating together, and definitely alcohol plays a big part in it, and serendipitous conversations. You meet people that you would never otherwise meet, um, and I I don't know how to, you know, phrase this, but I miss the spaces. I miss being in that architecture that you mentioned, Ciprian, at the start. I miss the buildings and the interiors and the amazing good fortune of being able to live within such structures with other people who really appreciate that. And you know, it is very difficult to recreate that, or to say to people like Maria, you know, you don't know what you're missing, because A, that's not fair, and B, I think an institution like Oxford or Bologna or Paris or, you know, many other ancient universities, 900 years, they've seen a lot. They've seen plague and war and other possibly more devastating challenges, and come through it. And so, though, you know, though I miss those things, there's some consolation in thinking, well, we're part of something historical that will be worth learning from, and sharing that learning with others. So I miss all that stuff, I really do, but I think it will come back, and I think it will have been valuable to have gone through it.
Yeah. To Maria, I mean, the question is to some extent similar, but you just to some extent are just entering this world. What is it that you want to bring from your own life, country, culture when you go back, or when you go physically to, you know, to some form of neo-normality?
Yeah, so I think one thing that had been interesting before, even during the application phase, was chatting with alumni and then talking about either launch week or large events where there's a buzz in the room, where there's a room with hundreds of people and you're meeting people and there's that energy. It's very hard to simulate that online. Although on the other hand, with smaller, you know, interactions, you have deeper, meaningful connections, but then sometimes you just want to be in a room with a lot of people and feel that energy. I think, you know, that is something that you know, would have been nice to have. And then, you know, Pegram mentioned the you know, food as a part of Oxford culture. We have the collegiate system, which is very unique to Oxford. My college is Wolfson. You know, most colleges have dinners. And in these dinners, you come together and you eat and you talk and you interact in person. And even for me, in my culture, food is a big part of it. It's synonymous to family. So not being able to do that is also a bit, you know, it would have been nice to be able to do that. Yeah.
Sorina, let's talk about
I
missing.
mean, I know it's lunchtime. It's lunchtime back in Bucharest, and we're all just bringing up the food element. But I will say that, you know, a big part of my role was to host dinners, and I remember the last dinner hosted at the Oxford Union. It was just wonderful to have like a combination of academics and students and external collaborators coming together, just sharing their passion for innovation and entrepreneurship. But I will say that there are ways in which you can build that or create that spirit of community. And actually, we worked with Pegram earlier this year. I think it was at the beginning of the lockdown, to deliver the Aspen seminar adapted for the MBA class. And Ciprian, you having worked at Aspen, you know what I'm talking about. It's a Socratic debate discussing the values that are at the basis of a good society. So we've done that online. And I think even though it wasn't like absolutely the same as it would have been having everyone in the same room and also sharing, you know, the time over meals and having that socializing bit. I'm confident in saying that we did manage to create a very, to strengthen the sense of community among the MBA class of last year. And Pegram, if you have any extra thoughts on this, it was a lovely experience for me.
Well, it really was. And for anyone listening who's not familiar with this, it's basically a small group discussion around some texts or images or maybe a poem, and surfacing common and different ideas. And what was really exciting about it this time was that everyone was in a different part of the world, as well as being brought together on Zoom. And some of the most unsettling events of that period were happening right at the moment. I mean, we had Black Lives Matters protests happening in the background of some of the people dialing into Zoom from New York City or from London, and being able to share the immediacy of those social protest moments inside our conversation. Well, that's something we could never have done without Zoom. And also it created a sense of shared experience that I would have had no access to otherwise. How would I have felt the vivid moment of a Black Lives Matter protest if you know, I'm in my ivory tower? But the circumstances of lockdown and the technology platform that we were forced to use really invigorated the whole experience and made it much more gratifying for everyone involved. You know, and I hope that unexpected things like that have happened to everybody, and that we can draw on those memories as much as anything else. You know. I'm curious too, Maria, as you get involved in working with Sorina at the Entrepreneurship Center in bringing students together with people from outside the university, are these serendipitous moments happening, even if they don't happen the way they used to in a buzzy room? But are you finding ways that it happens better through Zoom than otherwise?
Oh, yeah. So I think that serendipitous, feeling has a different interpretation in this world now. So it's almost more, I don't know, like half engineered, and then you let, the world take care of the other half. But I think that this kind of forces a bit more deliberate connection. And maybe that is not a bad thing. Maybe it's not so much that we're waiting to bump into each other in a room. Maybe it's I'm seeking you out and trying to connect with you and have a meaningful relationship. And maybe that helps the relationship as a whole. But we are, I think the student body as well has been very creative about, within the government guidelines, still recreating that, ability to connect. There are things like walk and talks where you can sign up for and be randomly assigned to one person. You have a walk at Port Meadow, which is a lovely view. And you have a conversation for 30 minutes in a socially distant way. I think those type of initiatives, although don't replace reality in its naturalness, but I think in terms of the eventual outcome, we might be surprised that this is the MBA cohort that has the deepest relationships so far. And maybe we do need to rethink how we think about the MBA as a whole, even for posterity, even post-COVID, taking elements that worked and kind of matching that with elements that, worked before now. Yeah, so that's how I would say. And then maybe one other thing is with my work with the Oxford Seed Fund. So Sorina mentioned that the MBA is an experiential, platform. It's pretty much not just the schoolwork. It's not just the lecture theaters. It's things like the Oxford Seed Fund, which is a student-led venture, program for 1 year. We get to invest in 2 businesses. I pretty much had to, work with the Entrepreneurship Center, recruit a team. Now we're a team of 11 functioning. And we had to do that through the thick of, not necessarily being able to meet as a group in person. So I think that's an interesting, perspective. We are running as a team, and where we can, we do find ways to simulate that social interaction, because the truth is, it is still very much important. If COVID taught us one thing is the fact that we cannot replace human interaction with technology. Technology can only enable it. And we've been able to pretty much run the team, even in this world where we're mostly on Zoom, and still be effective. And it's interesting because I do even think from a sourcing perspective, and that's finding the ventures, there is a global acceptance of the world we live in today. We all are a little bit more open to people reaching out and saying, can we get on a 30-minute Zoom call? That has its premium in a world like the Oxford Seed Fund. So that's one perspective that we found super interesting as well.
That's true. I think I'm not a natural extrovert, and large rooms full of buzz I understand the value of, but I kind of short circuit in too big a room with too much energy, and lots of people feel that. And Zoom is much more comforting for some people. I find it very easy to ask someone to do a one-to-one conversation on Zoom, or when someone asks me to have a one-to-one conversation on Zoom, much more so than I would if someone, kind of randomly approached me in a loud, busy room. And so just, at that simple level, Zoom has, or this circumstance has enabled richer interactions in places that it was harder to have them before. And certainly in a space like entrepreneurship, or in a conceptual space like entrepreneurship, where there is such a premium on extroversion and charisma, it masks the fact that often a lot of the most interesting ideas are not getting expressed. The most interesting opportunities are not being heard or even interrogated. So I'm curious that, what Sorina's saying about how there's more people coming and wanting to support the Entrepreneurship Center. I would not be surprised if some of those people are the ones that that were shy before and hadn't figured out how best to offer themselves to the center, but now have a way of doing it. That's just great. Do you think that might be true, Sorina?
Yes, that's a valid hypothesis, and also like just thinking of how technology has changed the way we work. I think for us at the Entrepreneurship Center, it definitely enabled us to scale what we do. So, for example, back in April, we launched a response program to the challenges posed by the COVID crisis to startups. But not only startups in Oxford, we were allowed to work with startups from all across the UK, which is not something we could have done under normal circumstances because of the geographical barrier. So then we selected 35 startups incorporated in the UK, and they gained access to Oxford faculty lectures. They had a board of advisors from our executive MBA cohort. They had MBA student interns, so that also allowed us to kind of compensate for all the canceled internships that the previous cohort had to deal with. So I think while, like Maria said, it's not ideal, this is not a natural maybe environment for us to operate in. This potential for scale is something that at least my team got excited about. The same with the program, with the Aspen program for the MBA's Pegram. We've been working on that for a couple of years now. We used to offer it to just a couple of our students because it was part of an international initiative. But being in lockdown has allowed us to open up the program to the whole MBA cohort, and whoever wanted to sign up could sign up. Yeah. So I'm choosing to be an optimist today and just focus on the added value of using technology to create learning experiences.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I think Ciprian is asking something, but I can't hear.
Yeah, I can't hear
me either.
No. Uh-oh.
Ciprian, we've lost you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We've lost your sound.
Can you
hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Lovely.
Yes. Okay.
So I have an easy question.
There's a text in the Aspen seminar called "The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas" by Ursula Le Guin. And there she talks, I'm not going to go into the story, but there she talks about how we leave behind a lot of people and we close our eyes to the challenges, social challenges, and you could extrapolate climate challenges now, etc., etc. Do you see what are the opportunities that this pandemic can bring to those that do not have access to higher education? Is there something that you see feasible, and does it have a business model as well?
Oof, that's such a big question and a good one. And I'm gonna jump in because I don't really know what to say. I'm gonna think with my mouth open, and give my colleagues time to formulate a better answer. Here's what I think, because as someone who's lived my entire life inside an ivory tower, I'm the least qualified to comment on this, but also the most aware of how irrational my perspective is. Higher education, it's a platform, it's a megaphone, but a somewhat blinkered one. And being reminded that its perspective is irrelevant as well as unavailable to so many other people in the world is important. I think to the extent that technology enables us to better capture what happens in higher education, record and disseminate it, then it's a really good thing. Conversely, if technology creates different barriers to higher education, for example, those that don't have access to the broadband infrastructure that facilitates this sort of thing, then it's a bad thing. And yet, like Sorina, I'm optimistic that we will be better able to bottle what we do and ship it around the world. That smaller chunks of more digestible, high quality, technologically enabled learning can come out of all this if people keep reminding us that it's important for that to happen, more so than it's important for us to go back to what we were doing before. I think this pandemic has presented higher education with some positive challenges and some opportunities for sharing the benefits of higher education more broadly. Is there a business model? There'd better be. There'd better be. Otherwise, it's going to have to be underwritten by, entities like the Gates Foundation or whatever it is that's, for example, facilitating the spread of vaccines and vaccine technologies. Initially, it may take some sort of subsidy. Eventually, it will have to be able to harness demand to the extent that it can generate its own income. I mean, I'll just simply say they'll have to be, because it's too important for this opportunity to be missed.
Maria, you are.
That's my random thinking. What do the other two have to think? Maybe Maria?
Yeah, Maria. You're an MBA student, so this is a challenge. You can pass or fail or in between. So let's presume this is a class. And this is the test or the brief. So you're an experienced digital designer as well.
Yeah. No, I love this question because it's something that I think about a lot of the time, and I have several perspectives to this. You are right. Technology, I think with COVID, it kind of forced us to accelerate our adoption of technology because for a period of time we had no choice. And what this did was pretty much change behavior. People had to adapt to technology, not just as a platform, but as a cornerstone. Without it, there was no other way to deliver education. And now that brings a problem because there's this world where technology is a great catalyst and it accelerates, education. I imagine a world where we have education with virtual reality, education with AI, education with customized, unique learning experiences that makes it much more effective over time. But then you have, on the other hand, a world where people don't even have access to technology. So this amazing tool is both, advancing education, but then also causing this huge divide. I feel like that is the prototype of every disruptive technology. Like, I feel like that's where technology and entrepreneurship comes in to solve this problem. And I think it's a unique, interesting opportunity. One thing that gives me joy is that the data looks in our favor. You know, we are seeing deeper internet penetration across the world. I mean, we have 5 billion unique mobile subscribers. Whatever business model it will take, the most channel that has the deepest penetration is mobile. So in my mind, we will have to figure out ways to deliver education, you know, via mobile, because one, it's cheaper. There's a burgeoning like second-hand mobile smartphone market in emerging markets across the world, which is further, you know, creating that deeper internet penetration, and then that can be the back of which technology and education then gets delivered. But I do think that for that to be successful, we can't think incrementally. I think we have to pretty much step back and rethink education in the context of having technology at the center of it, not just as an enabler.
Yeah.
We need to turn it over its head. And I think that that presents an interesting opportunity. And I can tell you that there are amazing entrepreneurs around the world who are, you know, excited by this and doing things in that, you know, space. And I do think that that would be one of the frontiers for the new decade. Those will be the unicorns we'll be talking about in the future, not necessarily just the social media apps. And maybe they spin out into that, we don't know. But I think I take comfort in the fact that the infrastructure required to deliver this new model exists and is moving in the right trajectory. We are seeing more internet penetration across the world. We are seeing more mobile subscribers to the internet. We are seeing more smartphone penetration. So yeah, that would be my summarized version.
Let's imagine I'm teacher as well. Can you hear me, Sorina?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Lovely.
I just wanted to say
wait.
Just to build on what Maria was saying around entrepreneurs, and I'll come in with my nonprofit hat because the center doesn't think in terms of business models. We're there to support. And I think this is where our responsibility lies, to support those, the entrepreneurial mindset, to help them move from idea to reality, and kind of focus their attention on their responsibility as well to capitalizing on this opportunity that they have to make a positive impact. And I'll also say that one thing that the school has done beautifully was opening up a series of events and online resources to the world. Not just us at the Entrepreneurship Center, but also the Dean runs his Leadership in Extraordinary Times series. It's available to everyone who wants to join, and we have fantastic contributions there. So I think we're definitely doing the best we can to bring our contribution despite the current challenges.
So you're gonna hear
me twice. We have some technical difficulties, like what online events would be without this. Okay. I have a challenge for Sorina. So Sorina, education does not automatically mean success and a successful life and revenue, and it doesn't come with opportunities. If you just have education and you can't get a job or you can't become an entrepreneur, you know, it's not enough. So what's the next level? You have digital education of Oxford level in Nigeria or Romania, right? How can you move from that to opportunity and actually create something for you and your community?
So I think this is where the network that I curate at the Entrepreneurship Center comes in. So we have 53 entrepreneurs and business leaders from all across the world who take a role of guides or advisors, if you want, to both our students and our alumni, because like you say, the fact that you graduate from the business school doesn't necessarily put an employment offer on your table. So we work a lot with these external members of our community to support the students once they graduate, and to ensure that they make the most out of what they learned during their course, but also that they make the most out of the doors that this degree opens, and the connections that Oxford brings about. So I would say that just making sure that you surround yourself by the right people, and you're patient, but at the same time very diligent in your search. It's our key elements to ensuring that you land your dream job, be it a high-paying one, I don't know, as a consultant or a banker. But as many of our graduates go on doing, they start up their own business, or they go back to being medical doctors in refugee camps in Africa, for example. So we advocate for following your values, and not necessarily chasing high revenues. Definitely not. We're a different business school in that sense,
Yeah,
and we take a lot of pride.
We have a lot of questions, but we don't have time for all. Let me read one or two. So please bear with me. I ask a slightly lengthy question. This is OF, just have the acronym, right? In software tech and in platform business, the better software professionals take a majority of the compensation. Do you think that this will happen in education, where some education companies will teach and access IT better and will garner a global audience at the expense of local academics and education? Is that a clear question to some extent?
I can take a stab at that. I think that we are seeing a globalization of education. We are seeing new ways with which people are learning. I'll give an example, and this is for software engineering. There are new business models that allow for people to gain software engineering skills without having to go to physical, local institutions in markets. These are delivered entirely online. So I think that we are seeing a world where it's not so much just about the local infrastructure, but that there is interest, there is infrastructure, and there's opportunity. And when you have those three, wherever you are, you can gain that skill. And I do agree that we are moving into a world where software engineering becomes a critical, or the ability to program or talk to computers or build computer systems is becoming critical, because technology is no longer, again, just a nice to have. It's now a must have in the future that we're kind of going to. So I do think we are seeing a globalization, and that opportunity is available to, it's almost no longer a factor of location, but just access.
Another perspective to add to that very insightful response from Maria is, I think the anxiety in the education profession is that new skills will be required for new times, and maybe career preferment and so forth need to be recalibrated. What is the role of scholarship? How easy does basic research translate into the mechanisms of largely tech-enabled pedagogy? Are people trained for the current reality? Not everyone is, and there will be some Darwinian weaning that certainly will cost dearly. There will be people whose life's work becomes devalued. The role of scholarship and research in this transitional period is uncertain. And I don't have any answer to that other than to say that we mustn't forget that what most pedagogy sits on is research and scholarship, and we need to find ways of adapting across that whole value chain.
Yeah. We have a game that we like to play. I hope you can hear me quite acceptable at least.
So
I'm going to start with
with
Sorina. Sorina, pick Pegram or Maria and ask them a very challenging question.
Pegram, what is the most challenging question I could ask you?
Nice one.
Oh goodness! Oh, that is so unfair.
Wow.
You know,
You'll get the chance. Don't
it's
worry.
gonna be something basically unanswerable. Like, you know, what does the future hold? I think if I had been an MBA student last year or even this year, I would have expected my professors to do what I think we are currently doing. You know, I would have expected my professors to engage with the students who know best about what this all means for them, and to help together structure some response for the future. You know, in other words, I'm kind of rambling, but what I'm trying to say is the most challenging thing about this is figuring out how to work together, and I hope we're doing that, but I'm not sure. So practicing what I preach, let me ask one of the students. Maria, do you feel like we're stumbling through this, professors and students, hand in hand and heading in more or less the right direction?
I think that there's been clearly a lot of thought by the school. It's clear that a lot went into thinking about it, and it's translated in our just sheer ability to still have in-person classes for the last, few months and do that successfully. I do think that there's still a lot of insight the students can give into co-creating their experience, and that the school can continue to reiterate that in a very, fast, quick, manner that in a way prepares for the next, group to even have a rich experience, because we are experiencing the school's ability to do that with the last group. So I do think that, it's not perfect, but then again, I do think that we live in a world where it's not so much about perfection, but progress. It's like, let's keep learning, let's keep iterating and making it better than the last time. So that's how I think about it.
A world where we're not looking for perfection, but I mean, that's really very nicely put. So who has a question for Sorina? A difficult question.
Has to be Maria.
Yeah, it has to be. Okay. Sorina, I think, what do you miss the most, and what would you bring back if you could right now?
Oh man, like you're making me go back to the dinners and the parties. No, but I think human interaction, as we used to know it, is the thing that I miss most. Like you said, we're lucky enough to still have a little bit of that in the way we interact at the business school, both with the students and us, the staff members. We're still able to go and work from the office if we want to, and that's an important element to it. But I think it's about time that we stop wishing for things to go back to exactly how they used to be, and instead of wasting time on that, I think it's time that we focus and we start planning for this new normal, or neo-normal, as Cyprian referred to it, because I think we have an opportunity to draw from this experience we've been having over the past 7 months, and design a hybrid learning model that is reliant both on strategic investment in digital technologies, on community partnerships, but also relies heavily on input from both our clients, who are the students, and the educators, so the academic body. So I think going forward, that's what we should be looking at rather than reminiscing on the past.
You talked about time. We don't have a lot of time left, but we do have time for a final question with a very short answer from each of you. Can you tell us the 3 opportunities or trends in education in the next 10 years from your personal perspective? Who wants to give it a go first? So 3 trends or opportunities.
I want to go first on that one. I've got some strong views. I think as technology becomes so much more important, the human element risks being forgotten. And you alluded to that, Ciprian, when you worried about disenfranchisement. And I think business education, STEM education has to include the humanities. We have to find a way to do that. So the 3 most important things for me are remembering our history, remembering our humanity, and using the arts in education. And I want to this is I've got the mic. One of the things that's so important in a situation like this is remembering that the arts record things better than technology. I'm mindful of the fact that this is being convened in Romania, and how at one point your part of the world was considered the end of the world, beyond the pale. The Roman poet Ovid, who was exiled to what he called Tomis and you call Constanta, wrote a record of his despair from Constanta that 2,000 years on, we still have, and we can still meditate on how someone exiled would feel and how he used art to cope with that. How many Roman technologies from ancient Tomis do we still have? Very, very few, but for the efforts of humanistic scholars. So my top 3 things are remembering the past, remembering the arts, and integrating them with our technologies.
Maria?
That's a good one. It's hard to compete with
what else can you say?
So I think for me, I think we are going to see a rethinking of education and real estate. I think we are going to see a decentralized education system where it's not so much one physical location, but several spread to which hubs are created. That's one crazy idea. I do think we're going to see the adoption of technologies like virtual, reality with the 5G, and then also artificial intelligence with education. It's going to bring a more, would I say, customized learning experience that we might find more effective. And then finally, and this is a piggyback on Pegram's point, it's pretty much, I do think that there's going to be a premium on human interaction. It's something that you can't take out of the equation. And I think we're going to have to think about building that into the experience, even if it's different from what we're used to, but in a new way that still serves the purpose. So those are the 3 trends I kind of think we'll see.
I know Sorina for more than 10 years, I think. So I'm going to add the second question with a fast answer. Last year in Future Summit, I was talking about the fact that we live in the luxury of time, that we don't have time anymore, etc. This year, I think we live in the luxury of people. People are scarce, the scarcity of 2020. We don't see people anymore. We don't hug people. So besides the 3 topics for 2030, what do you think is the luxury of 2021? What do you think we will miss most in 2021?
Well, it depends on what happens in 2021, Ciprian, because maybe it's just going to be exactly the same as 2020. So if that will be the case, we'll continue to miss, human presence. And if not, then I suspect we'll be missing the time for reflection, which perhaps we had plenty of this year. Because working to recover, we might be in a space where everything happens fast forward or has to happen quite quickly. And then just in terms of focus for the education sector going forward, I think innovation in learning models is imperative, and just getting on a platform with your students is not going to do it for much longer. So just, trying to innovate in the way you design learning experiences is going to be essential. And then, like I said before, community partnerships, be it with in terms of how we interact with people in our community, or how we use the spaces of that community, which is something that we've done, partnering with the local theater to use their space as a teaching space. So again, a larger focus on that. And something that's interesting, I think, for Eastern Europe, communication, this communication between the educators and the students, because my experience of learning in Eastern Europe was that you just, it was a one-way experience, right? So you didn't have a chance to input or give your opinion at all. So I think in cultures where that is still the norm, the focus should be on opening up that channel for dialogue and allowing the students to contribute to how they're being educated.
Thank
and
you.
That's it for me.
Thank you
a
so
long
much.
answer, sorry, Cipriano.
No, it was a very long answers, but good answers are great answers. You can quote me on that. Now, thank you so much. This was Oxford speaking at Future Summit. Thank you, Sorina, Pegram, and Maria for taking the time. It was a very interesting conversation. We're just getting started. This would have, we would have needed about 3 hours, but we can't do that as well. But thank you so much.
Speaking next. So Patrick is going to be joining, right, for the next session.
Yes,
so that's
I know.
exciting.
Unfortunately,
to see the collaboration.
Patrick is not feeling very well, so I take this opportunity to say all the best to Patrick, and I hope he has a good health week
recovery
forward, and I hope everything turns out great for him. So we will not have Patrick Nathan with us, but we will have him in the future for sure. I hope this year for a special session with him. Now.